Hey, so the recent attempt was on Maxi Bourse. Well, more than an attempt, I played it, right? I don't really have any notes on this. This is a game, as I said in the intro, that, I played a long time ago and it intrigued the hell out of me, and I've never gotten another chance to look at it. And it's one of a few games that I've seen that really tries to capture sort of the feel of a real free market. It doesn't quite do it, okay? Like, the bidding on the stocks is controlled by a mechanism. It's not. There is some abstraction of an external force on the market beyond just the players as the main movers and shakers. But when it comes down to it, if two people want the same stock and it's being set by the market value, they can bid it up as high as they want, as high as they have cash for, higher than they have cash for, although that can trigger some really weird effects because you go bankrupt and the bank ends up re-auctioning the shares, and they could go for any value really at that point, and odd stuff can happen. But the other games that I've seen that have something like this, I remember Supremacy's commodities market, and I said this in the end of the wrap, having something similar to this, and people hating it, absolutely hating that, prices would just kind of fluctuate out of control, and it happens here too. Basically, if two people refuse to stop bidding, the price just goes up, and then it just drops back down. I remember Supremacy's market being a little bit more broken than the one here. The one here, people have to be willing to actually pay the cash. I don't think that was the case in Supremacy. I think you had to indicate you were willing to pay the cash. You drove the price up, and then you didn't actually have to. Only one person did or something. I don't really remember what the situation was in that, but I remember that being far more gameable than this. This one, somebody does have to actually pay that money for those shares. And in that sense, it's a very, very unbounded market. One thing that shows is that such an unbounded market kind of doesn't work in a game situation, right? We're going to see at some point, I just picked up a copy of Crusoe's Planet. Now this is almost an economic simulation at a very small scale, and it combines political theory with economic theory to kind of give different options for the players to operate under, and different restrictions that they can follow as sort of, economic competitors in an environment with some political overtones to it. So, for example, there might be a dictator in place in the game who gets to make all decisions, basically, of the government, and can, say, I'm taxing you for everything. If that dictator's strong enough, he can't even be defeated, so he can just kill you. And that's kind of the Stalin-type view. He can wipe out, whole economic sections of his population without it having any effect on him, without there being any risk. And that's kind of a weird thing to look at. And I'm kind of looking forward to seeing how that handles it, because it's got it's got different economic models in it, but some of them are very much pure free market. And then, let's see, what else has this kind of open bidding? See, I haven't played Crusoe's Planet. I'm thinking executive decision and business management, both of which had kind of, you're allowed to bid things up, and they retain a value based on that, that's then tracked through the market. executive decision, though, there's a limit to how much things go up or down. Another one that's kind of similar is Star Trader, although that has a lot of controls on it and feels more natural because, you know, no economy operates without external forces on it, which is why when you try to distill these things too much and make them too pure, they don't feel natural. But the stock takeovers in the time that, and you know, at other times, but in the time that Maxi Bourse was published, some of them did drive the prices of stocks up to 2 to 3 times their valuation in takeover bids. These corporate raiders would come in, they'd say there's a lot of value in this company, I'm willing to pay a lot for it. Now, here, you don't have that. It's not people saying there's a fundamental value to the corporation. It's there's a fundamental value to me because I'm trying to win the game, or there's a fundamental value to him, and therefore I'm willing to pay to prevent him from winning the game, which is just, it's very, very contrived. You know, it's not at all the kind of situation that a real economy faces. All the same, it's an interesting game with some neat little mechanics to it, even though it's got kind of a, you know, wander around the board and hit things, and you have chance and community chest or events and rumors and properties and all this. There is a lot more, there's something very different from Monopoly to it, even if it has some similarities in terms of the type of board and the type of play. I don't think these plastic things can fit well with the board, which is a pity. Oh no, it's the box. I have to put that on its side. Component-wise, it's pretty cheap. It's not going to fit no matter how I put it, is it? Right, okay. Well, it's going to be a tight fit with that box in there. That's all I have to say. Component-wise, the board and the marker board are fine. The play money is crap. The little tokens are okay. And the cards for the shares are okay. Nothing, you know, special about them, but they serve their purpose. The play money is probably the biggest negative in the whole thing, as is, of course, the way the box kind of is too big, is too small for you know, to hold the cards, but such is. I think it's an interesting game. I'm glad I picked it up. I wouldn't have paid a lot for it, although I paid a decent amount in shipping, I guess, and I should probably regret that. But yeah, it's definitely something I wanted to play around with again. There are I have a number of financial games, and I haven't really looked at too many of them on camera other than the railroad games that I've looked at. And this is one of the more, you know, more intriguing to me of the pure stock manipulation and market games. So I wanted to get a look at it. I'm sort of so-so on it. I'd probably give it a 5 or a 6 because I think the game is slightly broken, and I don't think it's a terrible lot of fun, but I think it is an intriguing thing to look at. It's easy enough to learn, and for people to kind of take a view. I've got to go because my UPS guy is here. You know, sorry for the interruption. Something else came, Liberté, which I managed to get at a reasonable price. Shrink wrap at the time I had to open it up. But I did want to go over a little bit more in Maxi Bourse that I didn't really touch on. I kind of scratched on the wrap, but I didn't touch in the review itself, which is that the different rules. There are different games that are available in it, and they all have this sort of feeling of, you know, optional and variant rules. You feel like you're supposed to be playing the same game then, right? You know, I mean, so if you played Monopoly and the goal was to get, you know, the normal rules of Monopoly, or you played Monopoly and the goal was to get to start, to go around the board and get to go as quickly as you can, they're two very different games, right? I mean, it doesn't matter if some of the mechanics are the same in it. You roll the dice, you can buy property if you want, but in one game it doesn't matter. Well, that's how some of the modifications to Maxi Bourse feel. So, for example, let's see. The short game is you play until players have passed start a set number of times. Well, nobody passed it at all in the game I was playing, right? So the game I played was shorter than the short game, and I think that's the same as the one time we played it. Is somebody managed to win. It's very hard to prevent it because once somebody gets to, you cut a deal. You cut deals. It's very easy to get to the point where you have 4 corporations under control. Nobody's going to give you the 5th, but then you land someplace that allows you maybe to fill in your 5th, like we saw in the game that I played. So I think there are, and also if somebody starts to go bankrupt and has to sell things off, you may be able to get stocks that wouldn't be available to you through trade. Okay, so anyway, that's one thing. The other is, it's the richest player who wins. Well, this game, the only real use for money was to kind of fuel towards your victory conditions of, I need cash to buy these stocks that I'm going to need to trade or to make my conglomerates or my sets. And actually, had we gone past start with most of the players, we would have seen, yeah, you make some income off of what you bought. But for the most part, the reason that you need income is to just buy more stuff. So, manipulating the markets to the degree that is possible in the game becomes a riskier behavior. If you're playing to manipulate the markets, and that's how a couple of us, myself included, started playing in the opposed game I played, because we didn't really get what the victory conditions were, maybe. We thought money was important somehow. I mean, more important than it actually is. Well, if you start playing too much with that, you start setting stocks up for sale that could make someone win the game or put them in very good condition. If you don't hold the stocks that people want, they will be able to buy them, and not necessarily for as much money as they bought them when somebody lands on you. So, for example, in the game that I played, there were conditions where maybe one person would have really wanted a single stock. If I put 3 of that up for sale, nobody's going to step in and outbid that person who wants 1 for all 3 of them. And probably 3 people or whatever aren't going to be able to combine and outbid them and buy every certificate up. So the goal there is, don't put things up that people really want, because like we saw in the game that I played, if something does become available, it could well end the game right there. I mean, this was just a luck factor, but it is quite possible that you could get close, get to that 4th level without trading with someone else and be ahead of everyone else and just roll the lucky roll that lets you buy those extra shares of something that you needed, like Red was able to do. Okay, what about the long game? Well, that's play until everyone but one has gone bankrupt. Wow, that's going to be a weird game. I don't know if it'll end. I mean, that's a really long game, right? Because here's the thing. Let's say nobody buys any stock. Okay? Well, you never lose money. I mean, seriously, if you do nothing, you cannot lose. So you begin to think, wow, the people who wrote these rules didn't know what they were writing rules for, right? And that's one of 2 options. There's another one, which is play until all available stock cards have been sold, none remain in the bank. Now, if you played with both of them together, either one as an ending condition, it makes sense. But that's not how it is. So, for example, the short game has 3 set. One is until everybody's passed start a number of times. One is a time limit. Everybody gets to finish their turn. And one is a wealth limit, the first person who reaches cash on hand and stock portfolio equal to exceed the set amount. Now, I could drive my stock portfolio pretty damn high by some pretty artificial and weird means. I mean, these are not the same game at all. This is not one about trying to collect these sets. in any sense of the word. So let's say there's a wealth limit in the game. Then what am I trying to do? Well, I'll probably buy 3 shares of something and then bid on 3 more and try to drive the price up if anybody else wants to get in on it. Now, chances are nobody else will bid on my company because there's just no point to it. They'll be driving the price of my 3 shares up at their own cost. So it just becomes everybody buys their own companies and nobody else deals in them at all. The time limit, that's kind of like the passing start. You're going to see people doing other weird things to manipulate the money. Playing until everybody's gone bankrupt, that's a game that only stupid people will lose. You'll buy things if you're stupid. If you're not stupid, if you want to win that game, you do nothing. You do nothing all game. Unless you see something tremendously cheap that's just going to make you money no matter what. But in general, shares will lose you money if you pay for them. So you don't want to buy them. Play until all available stock cards have been sold. That's an interesting one. Of course, it doesn't say how you'd win that way. I'd assume it's whoever has the most wealth. But that's not absolutely clear. It could be, whoever has the most blue-colored stocks or something, whatever. Let's see the junior one. This one ends when everybody's made it around the outer ring. And again, the victory conditions aren't specified there. I'm guessing that it's richest player wins, but they don't really say that. You just play until you go around the board. So many times. Once. It's kind of a non-competitive game, right? Senior. It ends when everybody's made it around twice. And again, there's no real victory conditions. So again, it's a non-competitive version of the game. You're just trying to travel around the board. Yeah, and there's one where you deal out stock at the beginning of the game. That could be kind of interesting. You don't deal out all the stocks. It's just, 10,000 shares. Trading and buying rumor cards is a minor variant that allows you to cut deals involving those cards. Speaking of which, those cards are remarkably ineffectual, as is really the price. I mean, the price of things, the only real effect there is as the game goes on, your money becomes scarce. So maybe some decisions early on to not buy expensive things like mobile could be a good idea. Definitely buying the more expensive stocks hurt some of the players because you've got your money invested in them. They're not worth more to you. It's not like a Monopoly where you get something terribly valuable for having valuable stocks. When you go around start in this, let me see, maybe you get some of that money back, but still, it's just a percentage of it back. It's not a big bonus. Directorship might give you a little bit more. Let's see, dividends. Dividends, you just get money per share you own. So you might as well go for the cheap ones. Director's fees, you get the value of 1 share, but you've got to be holding 6 of them. Unless you go around the board 6 times holding that share, you will not break even. So, you're not going to make more. It's not like Monopoly where, the oranges make more than the pale blues. It's definitely, you just get boned less if you manage to go around a few times or whatever. So my feeling is the only game that feels like somebody actually designed it with a game in mind is the one that I played. And that one's still a little quirky and a little weird because, you can play with your money as much as you like, but that's not what the game's about. The game is fundamentally about collecting sets. And I mean, directly. So, for example, Monopoly directly is about bankrupting your opponents, right? This game is directly about collecting sets. Now, indirectly, collecting sets can help you bankrupt your opponents. In fact, it may be necessary. Indirectly in this, bankrupting your opponents can help you collect sets because they might have to sell off stock. On the other hand, the variant games are just completely different games with very, very little, I think, thought towards them when you look at the one like Bankrupt All the Other Players, which nobody should be able to win, unless you're playing with someone who just wants to get out of it. Right? Okay, so I guess the person who leaves first actually wins. Going bankrupt wins you that game because you're not stupid enough to keep playing something so pointless. Anyway, you know, the base game though is an interesting fact. It is an interesting little toy to play with. This isn't something that I think would make many people's tables very often. Although maybe if it did, they'd start finding some interesting strategies to it, and they might also find variants that actually work, that help the game make more sense.